Pallas is an operator that can do different things, maybe not as well as other 6 stars, but consistently. She can lane hold, she can DPS, and if she's not enough, her extra tile lets you place another unit in front of her to have an overall more consistent front line. That said, this complementary utility means she's often written off as someone who can't do things on her own, when that's certainly not the case. After all, how many operators gonna rival Kelsey in monologue power? Gladia, Ling, and some people say Neural, but Pallas is as strong as those 3 if not stronger, but is limited in-game only by her crippling alcoholism. So how do you actually use Pallas? It's easy, really. First things first, place her down. Because of her extra tile, you can stick her basically anywhere and she'll still work. In the front of operators, behind operators, in the corners of the map to snipe certain enemies. And you have even more options if you use mod Y, which lets you place her on high tiles. Speaking of mods, Pallas has 2. And if you want the short answer for the question you're definitely going to ask, just build this one. It's more damage. As for what they do, both of them help Munos operators, but let's be real, you're probably not using Munos operators. We're gonna look at how they affect Pallas specifically. Mod Y lets you place Pallas on high tiles, lets her heal herself and the person in front of her more, and also gives her a bit more self-healing. Mod X gives Pallas more damage, and more damage more often. In short, Mod X is for killing faster, and Mod Y is for dying slower. It's really up to you which Christmas color you like your numbers to be. Now, similar to how both mods are viable, Pallas is really good with all 3 of her skills. If you don't look that hard, you might think that skill 3 is her best skill. I personally don't think so, but it's still pretty good even if you don't have someone else to buff. It hits 3, which is nice, the extra attack is great, but the defense and block actually come in clutch in a lot of cases. You might think the biggest downside is the fact that you need to be above a certain amount of HP for Vigor to trigger, but in reality it's just a 50-second cooldown. That's a really long cooldown. For those who think this is Pallas' best skill, this might come across as Pallas really being that frail instructor that needs a big strong bodyguard to guard her, but if you look at the animation, Pallas is whipping her allies too, they're just taking negative damage. On top of the healing, they're constantly and violently reminded that Pallas is behind them and it's their job to keep her safe, but even if they die, Pallas adopts a fine I'll do it myself measure and gets all the bonuses herself. Still, if the 50-second cooldown is too long for you, might I suggest skill 1. What this skill basically does is, after hitting twice, Pallas hits twice for nearly twice the damage. That's it. That's all it does. It's really simple, but it's still great. You should try it. In practicality, there's also the instructor buff of hitting targets that they're not blocking, and the vigor buff that Pallas gets, so this does a lot more damage than you'd actually think it does. Finally, there's what I think is Pallas' best skill, though I should mention it's not by a big margin. They're all pretty good, as I said. It has a moderate DP cost of 25, meaning you'll probably have it when you need it. On activation, it gives Pallas 2 things. Well, 3 if you count damage, but damage is normal. 1. Pallas gets an extra tile. 2. Pallas gets an 85% chance to mini-stun. The extra tile, the chance to mini-stun, and Pallas' naturally high attack speed lead to a pseudo-slow, making it hard for enemies to approach her. Even if the enemies do reach Pallas though, they still have to deal with being attack cancelled, meaning Pallas, who should be at her worst state, does pretty decently actually. And I think that's it. You know, for not actually knowing how to do operator review videos, I think I did pretty okay. I forgot traits, but if you're paying attention, you should already know what they are. So yeah, that's it. That's all.